This is GPS, the Global Public Square. Welcome to all of you in the United States and around the world. I'm Zakaria coming to you live from New York. Today on the show, Donald Trump's White House in turmoil. The National Security Advisor has been fired. Meanwhile, Russia and North Korea have taken bold steps. Trump seems open to a one-state solution in the Middle East. What is going on? I have three people who ran national security in the White House, three deputy national security advisors, to help explain. Then, Russia's reaction to the firing of Michael Flynn and the underlying question, just how close is the Kremlin to the Trump team? And Caroline Kennedy, the former ambassador to Japan, on Prime Minister Abe's visit with President Trump, and the role of women in the land of the rising sun. But first, here's my take. Let's say you are a Trump voter, the kind we often hear about, an honest, hardworking American who put up with Donald Trump's unusual behavior because you wanted a president who would stop playing Washington's political games, bring a businessman's obsession with action and results, and focus on the economy. How's that working out for you? The first few weeks of the Trump administration have been an illustration of that line from the writer Alfred Montalbert: do not confuse motion with progress. A rocking horse keeps moving, but does not make any progress. We are witnessing a rocking horse presidency, in which everyone is jerking back and forth furiously, and yet there is no forward movement. Since winning the election, Donald Trump has dominated the news nearly every day. He has picked fights with the media, making a series of bizarre, mostly false claims about the magnitude of his victory, the size of his inauguration crowd, the weather that day, the numbers of illegally cast ballots, among many other issues. Now he's embroiled in a controversy about ties to Russia. But in the midst of it all, what has he actually done? Hardly anything. This week, Trump said at a news conference, there's never been a presidency that's done so much in such a short period of time. Matthew Iglesias of Vox observes that at this point in his presidency, President Obama had signed into law an almost $1 trillion stimulus bill to revive the economy, extended health insurance to 4 million children, and made it easier to challenge discriminatory labor practices. Iglesias notes that the Trump White House has not even begun serious discussions with Congress on major legislation. Trump has issued a series of executive orders with great fanfare, though fewer than Obama at this point, but they're mostly hot air. Lofty proclamations that direct some agency to review a law, report back to him, consider some action, or reaffirm some long-standing practice. His one order that did something, the temporary travel ban, was so poorly conceived and phrased that it got stuck in the court system and will have to be redone. But what about plans to reindustrialize the Midwest, bring back jobs, revive the coal and steel industries? What, for that matter, of the explicit commitments that, quote, on day one, quote, he would begin removing criminal illegal immigrants and would label China a currency manipulator, push for a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on all members of Congress, get rid of gun-free zones in schools and military bases. All were promised, almost none has been done. There are two aspects to the Trump presidency. There is the freak show, the tweets, the wild claims, the fake facts, the fights with anyone who refuses to bow down to him, the media, judges included, and the ceaseless self-promotion. But then there is Trump, the savvy business person, who named intelligent heavyweights like Gary Cohn, Rex Tillerson, and James Mattis to key positions, and who has at times articulated a serious reform agenda. For many people, the bargain of the Trump presidency was that they would put up with the freak show in order to get tax reform, infrastructure projects, and wise deregulation. That may still happen, but for now at least, reality TV is in overdrive and not much is happening in the realm of serious public policy. The Romans said that the way to keep people happy was to give them bread and circus, sustenance and entertainment. So far, all we have gotten is the circus. For more, go to CNN.com/Fareed and read my Washington Post column this week. And let's get started. President Trump is set to be interviewing candidates today to be his national security advisor after Michael Flynn exited the post on Monday night after just 23 days in office. One potential replacement has already turned down the job. Meanwhile, at the end of the week, a shakeup at the State Department left many career officers anxious about what their future will be. So who is actually running national security at the U.S. government? Let's ask three people who have held top jobs doing just that. Tony Blinken, Avril Haines, and Elliott Abrams were all Deputy National Security Advisors, an absolutely key position in government. Blinken was also Deputy Secretary of State under Obama. He is now a CNN Global Affairs analyst. Haines was previously the #2 at the CIA under Obama, the first female deputy director at the agency. And Elliott Abrams had many different senior roles at the National Security Council, including Deputy National Security Advisor during the George W. Bush administration. Elliott, let me start with you to just ask you a question about your own personal story. You were effectively offered the Deputy Secretary of State job by Rex Tillerson, met with Trump, with President Trump, and it was then withdrawn. What happened?
Well, the president vetoed it, which one has to say it's his absolute right to do. These are presidential appointments, but he looked back to the campaign and decided I'd been too critical of him during the campaign, during the primary fight, and said no to Tillerson.
But what I'm struck by is that there have been many people who were critical of Donald Trump. Betsy DeVos, he just met with Paul Singer, who effectively funded the entire Never Trump campaign and was lavish in his praise for him. So it seems as though if you're a billionaire or a general, you can have criticized him, but nobody else.
Well, unfortunately, I'm neither. I think there is a varying standard. I think that's clear, and it's disappointing.
Tony Blinken, let me ask you, the government, the way the U.S. government actually works in national security is it is run by these deputies committees. The Deputy National Security Advisor that you all were chairs the committee, the Deputy Secretary of State, Deputy Secretary of Defense, Deputy CIA Director. They actually run the government, push up the final decisions that need to be made by the President, Secretary of State, etc. At this point, you don't have a National Security Advisor, you don't have a Deputy Secretary of State, you don't have a Deputy Secretary of Defense. How is government actually running? What do you think is happening?
Fareed, it's a great question. Yeah, we like to think we did all the hard work as deputies, but here's the thing. The National Security Council and all of its processes, they're the center of gravity for making foreign policy. And when it's out of whack, the policy is going to be out of whack. And it starts with the personnel and it starts with the process. And there are four things this administration hasn't done and needs to do if it wants to get this back on track. First, they need a national security advisor and someone who can bring people together who's an honest broker. Second, they need to get all of the agencies of government in the room. State Department, Defense Department, Joint Chiefs, Treasury, Energy, you name it. Everyone has to be at the table. Third, they need to listen and loop in the National Security Council staff. These are career professionals who know exactly what they're doing, who've been marginalized to date. And finally, they have to check politics at the Situation Room door. This is one of the most troubling aspects of what they've done. Mr. Bannon seems to be running a parallel process, divorced from the National Security Council, to try to formulate policy. That is a recipe for ending up in a very bad place.
Avril, when you look at the issue of intelligence, one of the things that friends of mine have told me, sources in the intelligence community, is that they have, in a sense, probably lost, the intelligence community has lost confidence in the president. It's very rare to have the kind of leaks that you've had about the connections between the Trump campaign and Russia, that something is going on in the intelligence and law enforcement community, FBI, that is making them resort to something they rarely do, which is leaking to the New York Times, the Washington Post.
Yeah, I mean, I think the relationship between the intelligence community and the White House is absolutely critical, obviously. And the intelligence community has to feel as if it's capable of telling the White House exactly what it thinks, providing the best analysis that it can in the most objective way that is possible. And right now, I think you see a lack of trust there that can affect, frankly, the degree of information and the quality of it that comes to the White House, so that the president, frankly, can make better decisions that are informed by the intelligence that is at his disposal.
Can I defend the administration for a minute? Let's just remember, we're not quite, I think it's tomorrow is 1 month. And I think it's a mistake to take a snapshot today and say, the problem is we're going to be in this position in the summer. I think Tony's right, and these jobs are going to be filled. It's too slow, but they'll be filled. So if you come back, say, June 1st, you'll have the deputies, undersecretaries, assistant secretaries, a functioning deputies committee and principals committee. And those problems, at least, I think, will be behind us. Those are kind of teething problems.
But I want to ask you what your reaction is to what we're seeing right now, which is, on the one hand, at the Munich Security Conference, you have the Vice President, the Secretary of Defense, making these very strong and very traditional reassurances of American policy, restatements of American policy. Right. We are with Europe. And then you have Trump at these campaign rallies in Florida, seemingly still suggesting a very different kind of gestalt. Just hit the body language, even in terms of what it seems he's outside the government.
Well, I think that is certainly what they perceive. That is what Europeans perceive. I like your speech, Mr. Pence. I like your speech, General Mattis. But do you really represent the president? Is their question. And with the exception of Theresa May, none of them have met the president. One would hope that in the course of this, say, 6 months, the president goes to a NATO summit or meets individually with European leaders, and they get, for example, a commitment to NATO directly from him the way Theresa May got it. So again, the hope would be, this is happening in the first month. It's natural with a unique candidate and president like Trump, but it will get better, not worse. That would be the hope.
All right, stay with us. When we come back, what we're going to talk about is actual policy. What does the Trump White House have to decide on foreign policy in the next few weeks? Stay right here. We'll be right back.